I am Keisha Williams, 28 years old, and for the last 6 years I have saved every single penny for my first home. I finally found the perfect bungalow in Crenshaw, but when I went to check the balance on my down payment account, my entire $80,000 savings was gone. My sister Chantelle had emptied it to buy a luxury G-Wagon. You can just save again. She needs this more. My parents insisted when I confronted them. I just smiled and made one phone call to the bank. They had no idea that account wasn't just my savings. It was the one thing keeping their entire company from collapsing. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had family mistake your kindness for weakness. The scent of jasmine and fresh paint filled the air. I stood in the doorway of a charming 1940s bungalow in Crenshaw, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. This was the one. Mark, my realtor, leaned against the doorframe, smiling warmly. It's perfect for you, Keisha. The location is amazing, just a few blocks from the park. And with your 8 and 10 credit score and that $80,000 down payment, you are the strongest bidder by a mile. The bank just needs a final confirmation of the account balance and we can close tomorrow. $80,000. I repeated the number in my head, savoring it. 6 years of working my full-time job as a UX designer, plus taking on endless freelance projects at night. 6 years of saying no to vacations, of driving my 10-year-old Corolla, of meticulously budgeting every single dollar. It was all for this moment. Thank you, Mark. I'm so excited I can barely breathe. I laughed, pulling out my phone. I'll send you the screenshot right now. I opened my banking app, my thumb hovering over the savings account I had nicknamed my future home. I tapped it. My smile froze. The screen loaded. I blinked, sure it was a glitch. I refreshed the app. Account balance, $7.52. No. The word came out as a strangled whisper. I scrolled down, my hands starting to shake so violently I could barely hold the phone. My vision blurred. There, in bright red, was a transaction I didn't recognize. Wire transfer. November 14th, $80,000. Recipient, Beverly Hills Mercedes-Benz. Ms. Williams, Keisha, is everything okay? Mark's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I don't understand, I stammered, my face growing cold. This has to be a mistake. I frantically dialed the bank's fraud department. Hello, I need to report a fraudulent transaction. My entire savings account has been emptied. The line crackled as I was put on hold. The 10 minutes felt like 10 years. Mark stood by awkwardly, his professional smile replaced with a look of pity. Finally, a customer service representative came back on. Ma'am, I've reviewed the transaction. This doesn't appear to be fraud. The wire transfer was authorized by a co-signer on the account. A co-signer? My voice cracked. That's impossible. That's my personal savings account. According to our records, ma'am, the representative said, his voice flat and detached, the account has 2 owners. Yourself and a Ms. Chantelle Williams. Chantelle. My sister. I hung up the phone. My knees felt weak. I have to go, Mark. There's been a family emergency. I didn't wait for his reply. I ran to my car, my mind racing. Chantelle. Why, how I called her. Straight to voicemail. I called my mother, Brenda. Straight to voicemail. I called my father, Michael Sr. Straight to voicemail. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, a terrifying cold dread spreading through my chest. They knew. They all knew. Just as I was about to throw the phone against the dashboard, it lit up with an Instagram notification. Chantelle Williams just added to their story. I pressed the icon. Loud hip-hop music blasted from my speakers. The video was shaky, filmed from the driver's seat of a brand-new, sterile white Mercedes G-Wagon. The dashboard was still covered in protective plastic. Chantelle, my 25-year-old sister, screamed with delight, dangling the keys in front of the camera. Her new husband Ryan, a white guy she'd married just 3 months ago, leaned over from the passenger seat to kiss her cheek. The caption, written in glittery pink font, was a final twist of the knife. Finally got the car I deserve. I slammed the door of my 10-year-old Corolla, the engine sputtering and coughing before it finally died. I had driven so fast up the winding roads of View Park Windsor Hills, my hands shaking with rage, that I almost rear-ended the very thing I had come to see. It was parked in the center of my parents' sweeping circular driveway, positioned not as a car but as a monument, a gleaming sterile white Mercedes G-Wagon. It was so new it looked wet. And tied around the grille in what felt like a direct and personal insult was a giant, gaudy, celebratory red bow. I parked my faded blue Corolla right behind it, a pathetic little dinghy caught in the shadow of a luxury yacht. I didn't even bother to lock my car. Who would want to steal it? I didn't knock. I pushed the heavy oak door open and stormed inside. The sound of laughter and the distinct pop of a champagne cork hit me immediately. The entire family was gathered in the formal living room, the one my mother Brenda reserved only for Christmas or for impressing guests. My father Michael Sr., the proud owner of MJH Construction, was beaming as he poured champagne, his face glowing with pride. My mother was clutching Chantelle, my younger sister, rocking her back and forth like she had just won an Olympic medal. And Ryan, Chantelle's new husband of 3 months, was filming the whole spectacle on his phone, his pale, smiling face a picture of oblivious joy. My mother looked up and saw me, her smile widening. "Keisha, baby, you made it. Come in, come in. Chantelle has the most wonderful surprise we're celebrating." Chantelle broke away from my mother's hug and ran to me, her smile bright and blinding. She grabbed my hands. "Did you see it, Keisha? Did you see it? I told you I was going to make it. Now Ryan's family can't say a single word about what I drive. No more showing up to their country club events in that old beater." I looked at her glowing, triumphant face, her expensive new dress, her complete and total lack of conscience. My voice came out low and cold, colder than I had ever heard it. "It's a beautiful car, Chantelle. I really hope it's comfortable." "Oh, it is," she squealed, oblivious. "The seats are Napa leather and they're—" Because I cut her off, my voice rising. "You just bought it with every single dollar of my $80,000 house down payment." The laughter stopped. The music playing softly in the background suddenly seemed deafening. Michael Sr. froze the champagne bottle hovering over a glass. Ryan slowly lowered his phone. "What? What did you say, Keisha?" my mother asked, her smile faltering. "You heard me," I said, locking eyes with Chantelle. "You stole $80,000 from my savings account, the money I was using to close on my house this morning." Chantelle actually rolled her eyes. The sheer audacity of it almost made me laugh. "Oh my God, Keisha, stop being so dramatic. You're going to give Mom a heart attack. I didn't steal it. I borrowed it." "You borrowed it?" I repeated, my voice shaking now, not with fear, but with pure, unadulterated rage. "You drained my entire account to zero, Chantelle. The account is at $7. You don't call that stealing?" "I needed it," she shot back, her voice turning into a familiar, high-pitched whine. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Ryan's family, they're all doctors and lawyers up in Bel Air. They drive Porsches and Teslas. I couldn't keep showing up in that 2012 Jetta. It was embarrassing. You know how much image matters to people like them." Ryan, her husband, looked visibly uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Babe," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "I don't think my parents really care what car you—" "Don't interrupt me, Ryan. This is family business," Chantelle snapped at him before turning her fury back to me. "You always do this, Keisha. You always make everything about you. It's just money. You're a talented designer or whatever. You'll make more 6 years," I finally screamed. The sound echoed in the high-ceilinged room. It took me 6 years to save that money. 6 years of working a full-time job and taking freelance projects until 3 in the morning. 6 years of skipping vacations, 6 years of eating instant ramen, so I could finally buy a home. And you spent it in 6 minutes on a stupid car because you were embarrassed. My chest was heaving. I looked at my parents desperately, begging them with my eyes to finally step in, to finally take my side, just once. My father just stared at the expensive rug, refusing to meet my gaze. My mother, Brenda, walked over to me. She placed her hand flat on my chest, not as a comfort, but as a warning. "Keisha, that is enough," she said, her voice low and sharp. "You are making a scene. You are embarrassing your sister in front of her new husband. It is just money. You're smart, you'll save it again. Chantelle needed this. She's married now. She's building a life with a good family. We have to support her." I looked down at her hand on my chest, then up at her face. The betrayal was so absolute, so complete, it stole my breath. "Support her," I whispered, "by letting her steal from me." "It's not stealing when it's family," my mother hissed, her eyes narrowing. "You are being selfish, Keisha. You always have been." I stared at my mother, at her hand pressed firmly against my chest. I couldn't process her words. "Selfish. You think I'm being selfish. You are making a scene," she hissed, her eyes darting toward Ryan, her new white attorney son-in-law who looked like he would rather be anywhere else on earth. "Stop using that ugly word steal, Keisha. It's not becoming. Chantelle explained it. She borrowed the money." I looked at her, truly looked at my mother, Brenda, the woman who was supposed to protect me, defending the person who had just shattered my dreams. "She borrowed $80,000 without asking. She's just trying to fit in with her new family," Brenda insisted, her voice rising to that familiar, shrill, defensive pitch. "Those people have standards, Keisha. Her husband is from a prominent family. You're her older sister. You're supposed to understand that. You're supposed to help her." "Help her," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Help her how?" "By letting her live a lifestyle she can't afford, a lifestyle built on my hard work, on my future." The bitter taste of déjà vu filled my mouth. This wasn't the first time. I wasn't 28 standing in this ridiculous mansion. I was 22 standing in our tiny apartment in Inglewood, holding my first real bonus check from my first design job. $5,000. It had felt like $1,000,000. I was going to use it to finally pay off my student loans. And my mother had come to me, her eyes filled with that same fake, desperate concern. "Keisha, honey, Chantelle is in a bit of trouble. She maxed out her credit card again. You know how she is with clothes. Can you just help her out this once? Just lend it to her." I'd been hesitant, but I'd done it. I was the responsible one after all. And what had my mother said as I transferred the money, wiping out my own savings? "You'll make it back, Keisha. You're smart. You can always save again." I never saw a single dollar of that $5,000. I was pulled back to the present by Chantelle's voice. She had recovered her composure. She was sipping her champagne, looking bored, as if my breakdown was a minor inconvenience. "Honestly, Keisha, stop ruining my big day," she said with an annoyed sigh. "It's not like you were even using that money. It was just sitting in a bank account collecting dust. I'm making it useful. I'm investing in my future, in my marriage." "You think an $80,000 car is an investment?" I shot back. "It is," she insisted, her voice rising. "It's about image. And besides—" She paused, placing a hand delicately on her flat stomach. "I'm pregnant. I need a safe car for the baby." The room went quiet again. But this time it was Chantelle who looked triumphant. The ultimate trump card, the first grandchild. I saw my mother's face soften immediately, her eyes filling with actual tears of joy as she rushed to Chantelle's side, forgetting all about me. "Oh, honey," Brenda cried, hugging her. "You're pregnant. Why didn't you say so? This is wonderful." "Oh, Michael, did you hear? We're going to be grandparents." Chantelle soaked it in, looking at me over our mother's shoulder with a victorious smirk that said checkmate. I felt sick. She was using an unborn child to justify grand theft. My Toyota Corolla is one of the safest cars on the road, Chantelle, I said, my voice flat. It just doesn't cost $80,000. I turned to face her, fully ignoring my parents. You didn't answer my question. How did you get the money? That savings account is locked down. It requires dual-factor authentication. It sends a code to my phone for any transfer over $500. So how did you do it? Brenda and Chantelle shared a look, a tiny fleeting moment of shared panic. My mother quickly looked away, busying herself by straightening a picture frame on the mantel. Chantelle suddenly found her new shoes fascinating. They knew. They had planned this. I did it. The voice came from the head of the room. My father, Michael Sr., set his champagne flute down on the polished coffee table with a heavy, definitive click. I gave her access. I turned slowly to face my father. The champagne glass in his hand was steady. He was not ashamed. He was defiant. You. What did you say? I whispered the words, barely audible. Michael Sr. squared his shoulders, taking on the familiar role of the patriarch, laying down the law. I said I gave her access, he repeated, his voice laced with annoyance, as if I were the one causing the problem. I added Chantelle to the account last week. I thought she might buy a new stroller, something nice for the baby. How was I supposed to know she'd take the whole 80,000? You had no right. My voice finally broke, rising to a shout that silenced the room. You know how that account was structured. You know the security protocols I put in place. You went behind my back and gave my money away. That is enough, Keisha, my father thundered, slamming his glass on the coffee table. The champagne sloshed over the rim. You will lower your voice in my house. I am sick of your selfishness. That is a family account. What's yours is ours. We are a family, and families help each other. He began to pace, his face reddening. Chantelle is building a new life with a prestigious family. She needs to build an image. She has needs that you stuck in your little apartment cannot possibly understand. Why can't you get that through your head? An image. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that held no humor. An image built on theft. An image built on the ashes of my dreams. My mother Brenda rushed to my father's side, energized by his anger. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at me. He is absolutely right, Keisha. You are 28 years old, single, and you do nothing but stare at a computer screen all day. What do you possibly need a house for? Your little one-bedroom apartment is perfectly fine for you. She then gestured toward Chantelle, who was now quietly examining her nails, the picture of innocence. Your sister is married. She's starting a family. Her needs are more important than yours right now. It is that simple. You can just save again. I looked at them, the unholy trinity. My father, the enabler. My mother, the gaslighter. And my sister, the black hole who consumed everything in her path. They had discussed this. They had agreed on this. My dreams, my 6 years of work, were simply collateral damage in their quest to impress their new, white, wealthy in-laws. So that's it, I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a chilling clarity. My dream, my 6 years of work. It just doesn't matter. Your dream can wait, my father said dismissively, finally picking up his champagne glass again. You're responsible. You'll save it again. MJH Construction is having its best year ever. You'll be fine. We're fine. Everything is fine. I stared at my father, at his smug, confident face. We're fine. Everything is fine. Your company is having its best year ever. I asked, my voice suddenly quiet, almost conversational. Are you absolutely sure about that, Dad? Michael Sr. frowned, lowering his glass. The triumphant look on his face faltered. What is that supposed to mean? It means, I said, feeling the first tremor of power I'd felt all day, that you and Mom just made a fatal mistake. You really should have read the fine print on that loan you begged me to sign 6 years ago. My father's face went blank. What fine print? And no, I said, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face as I pulled out my phone. It was not a family account. My father's face, which had been so smug and dismissive, now held a flicker of genuine confusion. "What fine print?" he asked, his authority wavering for the first time. Chantelle, still basking in the glow of her new car and pregnancy announcement, hadn't yet grasped the shift in the room. "What are you talking about, Keisha?" my mother demanded, her voice sharp. "Your father added Chantelle to the account. It's done. Stop being so dramatic." I let out a slow, cold laugh, a sound that seemed to suck the warmth out of the room. He didn't have the authority to add her, he just never bothered to read the contract he signed. I turned my full attention to my father. He looked away suddenly, finding the pattern on his expensive rug fascinating. "6 years ago, Dad," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "Do you remember it? Or has this best year ever conveniently erased the memory?" He said nothing. His face was turning pale. Brenda looked nervously between us. "Keisha, that's not—" "Oh, it is," I interrupted, taking a step into the center of the room. 6 years ago, MJH Construction was a house of cards. You were leveraged to the hilt. You had already mortgaged this very house. Twice. You were weeks, maybe days away from total bankruptcy. Do you remember that? You went to every bank in Los Angeles. I continued, walking slowly toward him. Bank of America laughed you out of the room. Wells Fargo wouldn't even return your calls. Your credit was in the gutter. You were toxic. No one would give you a dime. Chantelle's smug expression had vanished. Even Ryan looked concerned. "And then?" I said, stopping directly in front of my father. "You came to me. I was 22 years old, Dad. Just graduated. I was living in that tiny apartment in Inglewood that you both made fun of, the one you said was beneath a Williams. But I had one thing you didn't. I had an 810 credit score." I let that sink in. "You came to my apartment. You sat on my lumpy futon and you begged me. You cried. You, Michael Williams Sr., cried and begged your 22-year-old daughter to save you. You asked me to be the primary guarantor on a $2 million business line of credit from Federal Commerce Bank. You were always a difficult child." My father stammered, his facade of control crumbling. "I was smart," I corrected him. "You know what you told me that night? You said, 'It's just a formality, Keisha. Just paperwork so I can get the best interest rate. It won't affect you at all.'" I shook my head. But I knew better. Even then, I knew better than to just trust you when money was involved. Especially after the $5,000 Mom borrowed for Chantelle and never paid back. Brenda flinched. She remembered. "So I told you yes. I would help. But I had conditions. I told you I wasn't just co-signing. I hired my own lawyer. A very good one." Michael Sr.'s jaw was clenched. He definitely remembered this part. "My lawyer drafted the terms of the guarantee. I agreed to put my perfect credit, my entire financial future on the line for your $2 million debt. In exchange, I had full, unrestricted access to that account. I had veto power over any transaction larger than $20,000. And," I added, glancing at the empty savings account on my phone, "I was permitted to use that business account for my own high-yield savings, as it was my credit securing the entire line. It was my payment for the risk I was taking." "You were so desperate to save your company," I whispered, "that you signed the addendum without even reading it. You just saw the $2 million and you signed." Chantelle looked lost. "So what?" "You had access. Dad had access. He just gave me access too." "What's the big deal?" "The big deal, Chantelle," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, "is that my lawyer, who is much smarter than your husband or my father, put in a failsafe. A little clause to protect me. A clause to protect my entire future from exactly this. From your greed and their weakness." I took a sip of the champagne my father had poured, savoring the moment. Section 4. Clause B. "Do you remember it, Dad?" My father, Michael Sr., and my mother, Brenda, just stared at each other. Their blank expressions were all the confirmation I needed. They had no idea. They didn't remember. "Let me remind you, Dad," I said, my voice sharp and clear, cutting through the heavy silence of the room. "It's called the Guarantor Protection Clause. Section 4, Clause B. I have it memorized. I've been reciting it to myself for 6 years, just in case of a day exactly like this." I took a step closer to him, my voice never rising but suddenly feeling like the loudest thing in the room. It reads, "To protect the primary guarantor Keisha Williams from financial risk due to the potential mismanagement of the borrower MJH Construction, it is hereby stipulated that the associated business line of credit account number ending in 771 must maintain a minimum liquid balance of $75,000 at all times." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. I watched my father's eyes narrow, the gears in his head finally painfully turning. 75,000. Brenda whispered, her hand flying to her throat. $75,000, I confirmed. "And what I asked you was the balance of my down payment savings, the money I kept in that account, $80,000. It wasn't just my savings, Dad. It was leverage. It was the safety net I put in place to protect myself from you. The one condition I had, the one line you could not cross." I held up my phone and showed them the mocking $7.52 balance on the screen. "When you added Chantelle to my account, when you authorized her to borrow my $80,000, when you let her drain that account down to $7, you didn't just give away my money." I took a deep, steadying breath, preparing to deliver the final blow. "You, Michael Sr., and you, Brenda Williams, just violated your $2 million loan agreement." The color drained from my father's face. Brenda let out a small, strangled gasp. Ryan, who had been silent this whole time, took a noticeable step away from Chantelle. "Defaulted," Michael Sr. whispered. "What? What do you mean it's just a clause? We'll fix it, Keisha. You just put the money back in. It's that simple." "Oh, Dad," I said, pity dripping from my voice. "You really don't understand business at all, do you? You breached a contract with a federal bank. It's not about putting the money back. It's about the breach of trust. It's about the fact that the guarantors, you, proved you are financially reckless and cannot be trusted with their money." Chantelle, who had been staring at her new husband's horrified expression, finally spoke. She was clearly panicked, not by the business implications, but by Ryan's rejection. "So what?" She snapped, her voice high and shaky. "This is so stupid. Who cares about some boring clause? Just call the bank and fix it, Keisha. Or just put the money back. You said you're a successful designer. Just put your money back in." I looked at my sister. After everything, she still saw me as the family ATM, the cleanup crew for her messes. She still didn't understand that she was the one who had lit the match. I smiled. A slow, cold smile that held no warmth at all. I pulled out my phone. "You're right, Chantelle. I should put more money in. Or maybe I should just call the bank. I should probably let them know what's happened." "Good," Chantelle said, relieved. "Call them. Fix this." "Oh, I'll call them," I said, scrolling through my contacts. "But I don't think you're going to like the conversation." I found the number I was looking for, a number I had kept programmed in my phone for 6 years just in case. "It's time to talk to an old friend of the family. I'm sure you all remember Mr. Davidson from Federal Commerce Bank." I pressed the call button. My family stared at me like I had lost my mind. Chantelle was the first to recover, letting out a sharp, ugly laugh. "Oh my God, who are you calling?" she sneered, tossing her hair back. "Are you actually going to call the police on your own sister?" "Don't be so pathetic, Keisha. You're just bluffing. You'd never do anything to actually hurt the family. You're too weak." "Bluffing," I repeated. The word felt foreign. "You think after you stole my entire future to buy a car that this is a bluff?" I looked down at the contact on my phone. The number I had memorized 6 years ago. The number I had prayed I would never ever have to use. I pressed the call button. Then I pressed the speakerphone icon. The sound of a phone ringing crisp and digital filled the dead silent living room. 1 ring, 2 rings. Chantelle's mocking smile began to falter. My mother Brenda looked nervously at my father. "Hello," a professional voice answered. "Federal Commerce Bank Commercial Lending. How may I direct your call?" My voice was steady. It didn't shake. I almost didn't recognize it. "Hello, this is Keisha Williams. I need to speak with Mr. Davidson immediately. It's an emergency." "Mr. Davidson is in a meeting, ma'am. Can I take a message?" "No," I said, my tone hardening. "You will interrupt his meeting. Please tell him that Keisha Williams, the primary guarantor for the MJH construction account, is on the line. And tell him I am calling to report an active breach of contract." My father's face, which had been pale with confusion, instantly turned a deep mottled red. "Keisha, no!" he roared, lunging forward, his hand outstretched to snatch the phone. "You will not do this. This is a family matter. Hang up that phone right now." I didn't flinch. I simply held up my free hand, a barrier he didn't dare cross. "Don't touch me," I said. My voice was quiet, but it vibrated with 6 years of suppressed rage. He actually recoiled, his hand dropping to his side as if he'd been burned. A click on the line. The sterile hold music stopped. "Ms. Williams, Mr." Davidson's voice was exactly as I remembered, polite, professional, and cold as steel. He was a man who only cared about numbers, which made him the perfect person to talk to. "This is a surprise. I was told you were in a meeting. What is this about a breach of contract?" My parents were frozen. Chantelle looked confused, as if she was trying to figure out if this was part of my bluff. Ryan, her husband, was slowly backing toward the hallway, trying to physically remove himself from the blast radius. "Hello, Mr. Davidson," I said, my voice perfectly calm, perfectly professional. "Thank you for taking my call. I am calling to formally report a severe breach of contract regarding the loan agreement for MJH Construction account number ending in 771. "Go on." His voice was cautious now. "I am staring at the account right now, Mr. Davidson. As you know, I am the primary guarantor. I am reporting an unauthorized wire transfer of $80,000 executed yesterday, November 14th. "Unauthorized," he repeated. "My records show authorization from Mr. Williams Sr." "That's correct," I said. "The transfer was authorized by the non-guarantor co-signers, Michael Williams Sr. and Brenda Williams. It was unauthorized by me, the primary guarantor whose credit this entire loan is secured against." "Keisha, you are destroying this family," my father yelled, his voice cracking with desperation, hoping the banker on the other end would hear his pain. I didn't even look at him. I kept my eyes locked on the G-Wagon keys, still sitting on the coffee table. "Mr. Davidson," I continued, "that unauthorized transfer has brought the account balance down to $7.52. This action is in direct violation of Section 4 Clause B of our agreement, which, as you know, requires a minimum liquid balance of $75,000 at all times. The contract has been irrevocably breached by the borrowers." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy, profound. I could picture Mr. Davidson in his high-rise office adjusting his glasses, his fingers flying across his keyboard, verifying my claim. The only sound in the room was Chantelle's uneven breathing. When Mr. Davidson spoke again, all traces of polite professionalism were gone. His voice was ice. "Ms. Williams, thank you for bringing this to our attention immediately. I have the account in front of me. I confirm the balance. This is a violation of the most serious nature." He paused, and the hook was delivered. "Ms. Williams, I need to ask you a question. Are you aware that your co-signers, Mr. and Mrs. Williams, not only authorized this transfer, but that they also signed a supplemental affidavit yesterday afternoon? An affidavit stating that the transfer was for emergency equipment procurement, and that all guarantor agreements, including Section 4 Clause B, were being met." He paused again. "Are you aware, Ms. Williams, that they actively and fraudulently concealed this breach from the bank?" I stared at the phone, the silence in the room so total, I could hear the faint buzz of the recessed lighting overhead. My father looked like he had been struck by lightning. My mother's mouth was open, but no sound came out. "Fraudulently concealed," I repeated into the phone, my voice steady. So they actively lied to the bank yesterday to cover up the withdrawal. That is correct, Ms. Williams. Mr. Davidson's voice was grim. Which brings us to your options as the primary guarantor. This is a very serious breach. The bank is prepared to act immediately. However, your contract gives you control. He paused, clearly outlining my choices. Option 1. The breach is curable. If you choose to deposit $80,000 from your personal funds immediately and sign a waiver acknowledging the breach, but agreeing to continue the guarantee, the bank will consider the matter resolved. Before he could even get to option 2, my mother, Brenda, lunged forward, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. She didn't kneel, but her whole body was begging. "Keisha, baby, that's it. Just put the money back in," she pleaded, her voice a desperate sycophantic whine I had never heard before. "You can do that. You're smart. You have savings. We promise we will pay you back every single penny, won't we?" Michael, my father, Michael Sr., just stared at me, his face ashen. He couldn't even speak. "We will pay you back, honey, I swear it." Brenda pressed on tears, now welling in her eyes. "We just need a little time. It was a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake." I looked at my mother. At her tear-streaked face and desperate pleading eyes, I almost felt pity. Almost. I smiled a small, tight smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Pay me back?" I asked, my voice soft. "You mean just like you paid me back the $5,000 you borrowed 6 years ago? The money for Chantelle's credit card debt. I'm still waiting on that transfer, Mom." Brenda's face froze. The manufactured tears stopped instantly. She recoiled as if I had slapped her. I turned my attention back to the phone, my voice becoming as cold and professional as Mr. Davidson's. "Mr. Davidson," I said, "please confirm that there is a Section 7 in our agreement. A section detailing guarantor rights in the event of an intentional breach by the borrower." "Yes, Ms. Williams," he replied. "Section 7 Clause C is quite specific." "Thank you," I said. "Then let's proceed. I will not be curing the breach. I will not be depositing $80,000. I am informing you as our legal agreement stipulates that my trust in the co-signers Michael Williams Sr. and Brenda Williams is irrevocably broken." "Keisha, no." My father finally found his voice. It was a strangled, desperate sound. "You can't. You don't understand what that means." I ignored him, my gaze fixed on the wall in front of me. "Mr. Davidson," I continued, "my co-signers did not just make a mistake. They actively conspired with a third party to withdraw funds below the legal threshold. They then actively and fraudulently lied to your institution to conceal that breach. Their actions have placed my personal credit and financial standing in catastrophic jeopardy. I can no longer in good faith guarantee this $2 million loan." "No, Keisha, please," my mother shrieked, all pretense of dignity gone. "Don't do this to your family." "Therefore," I said, my voice rising just enough to drown her out, "I am hereby exercising my full rights as primary guarantor under our contract." I paused, letting the silence stretch before delivering the final fatal line. "I am invoking Section 7 Clause C." My father let out a sound like the air being punched out of his lungs. He stumbled back, his hand grabbing the back of a chair to steady himself. He stared at me, his eyes wide with a terror I had never seen before, his face slick with a sudden sweat. "It means, Keisha, it means you're... I held his gaze. The gaze of the man who had begged me to save his company 6 years ago and who had just without a second thought sacrificed my future for a luxury car. "I know exactly what it means, Dad," I said. My voice was calm, clear, and cold. I turned my attention back to the phone still on speaker, filling the silent room. "Mr. Davidson, are you still there?" "I am Ms. Williams." His voice was sharp, all business. "Good." I took a deep breath. "I am invoking my right as primary guarantor under Section 7 Clause C. I want you to call in the note. No. The word wasn't spoken. It was a primal scream that tore from my mother's throat. Keisha, no, you can't. I continued as if she hadn't made a sound, speaking clearly into the phone. I want the full outstanding balance of the loan demanded for immediate repayment. Yes, the entire $1.92 million. I am officially withdrawing my guarantee effective immediately. The bank needs to be made whole. There was no hesitation from Mr. Davidson. He was a banker, not a therapist. This was just math. Understood, Ms. Williams. Your request is received and acknowledged. As per the terms of the agreement, your invocation of Section 7C as the primary guarantor is binding. I could hear the sharp, distinct clicks of his keyboard, each one a hammer blow in the suffocating silence of the room. My father had sunk to the arm of the sofa, his head in his hands. Please be advised. Mr. Davidson continued his professional monotone, echoing like a judge's sentence. As of this moment, Federal Commerce Bank is officially declaring the loan to MJH Construction to be in default. A formal demand for immediate payment of the full $1.92 million will be messengered to Mr. and Mrs. Michael Williams Sr. within the hour. Wait. Please, my father begged, his voice muffled. It was a mistake. We can fix it. But Mr. Davidson wasn't finished. If the full amount is not remitted to the bank within 24 business hours, we will immediately begin liquidation proceedings on all assets tied to the loan. That includes MJH Construction, all company equipment, all accounts receivable, and… let me see. He paused, and I knew what he was looking for. Ah, yes. The secondary collateral listed, which I see here, is the residential property at 445 View Park Drive. This house. The house they were celebrating in. Thank you, Mr. Davidson, I said, my voice as calm as his. You've been very helpful. Thank you, Ms. Williams, for your diligence in reporting this breach. Have a good day. The line clicked. He was gone. I pressed the end call button on my phone and slid it back into my pocket. The silence that followed was terrifying. It was the sound of a vacuum, the sound of a future being erased. Chantelle, who had been staring at the door where her husband Ryan had fled, finally turned. Her face was a mess of smeared mascara. What does that mean? She whispered, her voice trembling. What's liquidation? Does that mean they're going to take the car back? My father didn't answer her. He was shaking his head, his face a ghastly shade of gray. He looked like he had aged 20 years in 2 minutes. He finally looked up from his hands, his eyes vacant and horrified. It means, he mumbled, his voice so low I could barely hear him, that we're ruined. Brenda looked at him, her face a mask of utter confusion. What are you talking about, Michael? Ruined? Don't be so dramatic. Just call him back. Tell him Keisha was joking. Tell him it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Mom, I said. Michael Sr. looked up at his wife, his eyes filled with a terror I had never seen before. He said 24 hours, Brenda. 24 hours. To come up with $2 million. $2 million, Chantelle's voice was a faint squeak. But it was only $80,000, just for the car. My mother Brenda finally understood. Her confusion morphed into a familiar white-hot rage. But this time it wasn't directed at me. It was directed at Chantelle. You! She shrieked, lunging at her favorite daughter. You did this with your car! Your stupid, selfish… Me! Chantelle scrambled backward. Dad's the one who gave me the access. He said it was fine. He said Keisha would just save again. This, I said, my voice cutting through their screams. This is what you don't get. You're fighting over who's to blame for the car. I looked at my mother. You think this is about $80,000? I am doing this, I said, turning to my father, because 6 years ago you were drowning. You had nothing, and I was the only person in the world who would throw you a lifeline. I tied my entire financial future, my perfect credit, to your sinking ship. and the one condition I had, the one rule I asked you to follow to keep me safe, was to not touch that $75,000. And what did you do? I looked around at all of them. You didn't just cross the line, you took Chantelle by the hand and you sprinted across it to go buy a Mercedes. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed the bank. You committed fraud. You lied on an affidavit. This, I said, gesturing to the impending ruin around them, is not because of me. This is because you signed a contract you didn't read, because you betrayed the only person who was willing to trust you. You did this to yourselves. As my words settled in the room, a new sound emerged. A sharp, digital ringing. It wasn't my phone. It was my father's. It was sitting on the coffee table, vibrating violently against the glass, the sound echoing the pure panic in the room. We all stared at it. Michael Sr.'s eyes widened in terror. He didn't move. "You should get that, Dad," I said softly. He looked at the caller ID, his hand trembling so badly he could barely reach for it. It's the bank," he whispered, his eyes pleading with me. "It's Mr. Davidson." My father, Michael Sr., stared at the ringing phone on the coffee table, as if it were a venomous snake. The sound, sharp and demanding, echoed through the room, a soundtrack to his unraveling. "Get it, Dad," I said, my voice soft. With a trembling hand, he picked up the phone. "Hello," he stammered. "Yes, Mr. Davidson. I understand." We all watched him. My mother, Brenda, held her breath. Chantelle had stopped crying, her eyes wide with fear. Ryan, her husband, stood near the hallway, his arms crossed, his face a mask of disgust. "Yes," my father whispered into the phone. "I see. The full amount. 24 hours. Yes, I understand." His voice was hollow, mechanical. I don't know. I'll have to. I understand." He hung up. The phone didn't make it back to the table. It simply slipped from his nerveless fingers and thudded onto the expensive Persian rug. He sank onto the sofa, his eyes vacant, staring at nothing. They're freezing the accounts," he whispered, his voice cracking. "All of them. The main operating account, the payroll account, everything." He looked up at my mother, his eyes wide with a dawning, childlike terror. "Brenda, the payroll, 50 families. Their paychecks are due on Friday. I can't pay them. The material suppliers, they won't deliver. It's all gone." The silence was shattered by my mother's voice, no longer soft or pleading, but a sharp, venomous shriek. She turned on my father. "You!" she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at him. "You told me it was fine. You told me Keisha would never know. You told me that little clause was just legal nonsense. You did this, Michael. You've ruined us." My father, who just minutes before had been the king of this house, now looked like a cornered animal. He rounded on the easiest target. "Me!" he roared, lurching to his feet and turning on Chantelle. "She's the one, $80,000 for a car. Are you insane? You stupid, selfish little girl. You just destroyed your father's company. You destroyed everything." Chantelle recoiled, fresh tears streaming down her face. But this time, they weren't tears of manipulation. They were tears of pure animal panic. "That's not fair," she screamed back, her voice cracking. "You're the one who gave me the access. You're the one who told me to take it. You said—" She choked on a sob. "You said Keisha has plenty of money, she won't even notice. You said, it's time you had something nice too. You told me to do it." The admission hung in the air, ugly and raw. My father, desperate to appease his favorite, had not just allowed the theft, he had encouraged it. He had named me as the target. My mother looked back and forth between her husband and her daughter, her face a mask of horrified realization. The perfect family image she had curated for decades was exploding, taking the house, the money, and all the lies with it. But it was Ryan, Chantelle's white, wealthy husband, who delivered the final devastating blow. He had been standing silent by the archway, his face growing redder and redder as the scene unfolded. "Wait a minute," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Chantelle looked up at him, her eyes hopeful. Ryan? Baby, please, it's not what it looks like. Shut up, Chantelle, he said, and the coldness in his voice made even me flinch. He took a step forward. Did I just hear you say, you stole that money from your sister? No, I borrowed it. My dad said. I don't care what he said. Ryan's voice was sharp now. You told my parents, that your father bought you that G-Wagon as a gift, as a welcome to the family present. He laughed a short, bitter sound. I was embarrassed, I told my father. See, her family has money too. I've been defending you people. Ryan, please. Chantelle begged, trying to grab his arm. He yanked it away as if her touch was toxic. My father is a judge. My mother sits on 3 charity boards. And I just married into a family of frauds. A family that steals from each other and lies about it. He stared at Chantelle, his face pale with disgust. And you just bankrupted your own parents over a car. Chantelle scrambled forward, her hands outstretched, grabbing at Ryan's expensive blazer. Ryan, no, baby. Please listen to me. She sobbed, her voice a desperate, ugly wail. It wasn't like that. I was going to pay her back. I promise I was going to pay it all back. Ryan looked down at her hands on his arm, his face a mask of pure disgust. He didn't just pull his arm away, he shook her off as if her touch was physically repulsive. Pay her back, he scoffed, backing away toward the front door. With what, Chantelle? With more lies, with more stolen money? I can't believe this. He ran his hands through his hair, his composure completely gone. I married a thief, a common thief. He laughed a short, hysterical sound that had no humor in it. My family, my God. What am I going to tell them? My father is a judge, a federal judge, and I just introduced him to a family of frauds and criminals. Brenda, my mother saw her perfect wealthy son-in-law about to walk out the door. She rushed forward, her hands clasped. Ryan, please don't say that. It was a misunderstanding. She's young. She made a mistake. She loves you. Ryan spun around to face her, and the look in his eyes was so cold, so full of contempt, that even my mother stopped in her tracks. You think I care? He spat. You think her loving me fixes this? You're just as bad as she is. You stood right here and encouraged this entire family. You're all toxic. You feed on each other. You lie for each other. You're rotten. He turned his full attention back to Chantelle, who was now crumpled on the floor weeping. You lied to me, he said, his voice quiet now, which was somehow more terrifying. You told me your parents bought you that car as a gift. You lied to my parents. You let me brag about how generous your family was. He pointed a shaking finger at me, then at my father, then back at Chantelle. You stole from your own sister. You let her work for 6 years saving for a home, and you spent her future in one afternoon on a status symbol. And in doing so, you bankrupted your entire family. You destroyed your father's company. You think I want to be tied to this. You think I want my name, the judge's name, associated with this filth. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the gleaming Mercedes-Benz keychain. He didn't just drop it, he threw it. The keys clattered loudly on the glass coffee table, skidding to a stop right in front of where my father was sitting frozen. There, Ryan said. Enjoy your car, Chantelle. You're going to need it, because when the bank takes this house, you'll probably have to live in it. He turned and strode to the front door. Ryan, wait! Chantelle screamed, pushing herself up. Her voice was raw with panic. You can't just leave me. I'm pregnant. Ryan stopped. His hand was on the doorknob. The entire room held its breath. My mother looked up, a tiny, desperate flicker of hope in her eyes. This was the trump card. He couldn't leave a pregnant woman. He turned around slowly. His face was unreadable. He looked at Chantelle, at her tear-streaked face and her designer dress. He looked at her flat stomach. Then he looked at me. and in his eyes I saw nothing but the cold calculation of a man cutting his losses. "Congratulations," he said, his voice flat and devoid of all emotion. "In that case, I'll expect a paternity test." He opened the door. "Have your lawyer call mine." And then he was gone. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing through the house like a gunshot. For a full 10 seconds nobody moved. The only sound was Chantelle's ragged, gasping sobs. She had lost everything. The husband, the image, the money. It was all gone. She slid down the wall, curling into a ball on the floor, her body shaking with violent, uncontrollable sobs. My mother Brenda just stood there, her hands fluttering uselessly by her sides. She looked at her broken favorite daughter. She looked at her husband, Michael Sr., who was staring at the wall, his face a gray mask of ruin. He looked like a dead man. Then slowly, as if pulled by a string, both of my parents turned their heads. Their eyes met mine. The anger was gone. The arrogance, the condescension, the years of dismissal, all of it had vanished. All that was left was a raw, primal, and utterly naked terror. They had one last card to play, one last hope, and she was standing right in front of them. The sound of the front door slamming shut seemed to echo for an eternity, a final definitive punctuation mark on the end of Chantelle's fantasy life. Chantelle herself was just a heap on the floor, her body racked with the kind of ugly, dry sobs that come after the tears have run out. My father, Michael Sr., looked like he had been turned to stone. He stood unmoving, staring at the door where his new son-in-law had just vanished. My mother Brenda was the first to move. Her eyes, wide and frantic, darted from her ruined daughter on the floor to her ruined husband, and then finally to me. I was the only one left standing, the only one not broken. She took one step, then another, her hands fluttering helplessly. "Keisha?" she whispered. She stumbled as she crossed the room, stopping right in front of me. Her face was a mask of terror, her expensive makeup streaked with black tears. "Keisha," she said again, her voice desperate. And then in a move that shocked even me, her knees buckled. She sank to the floor. My mother, Brenda Williams, who cared more about appearances and social standing than anything in the world, was actually kneeling on the Persian rug. She grabbed my hand, her grip like a claw, her manicured nails digging into my skin. "Keisha, baby, please," she begged, the word tearing from her throat. "You have to fix this. You can fix this. You're the— What did that man call you, the guarantor? You have the power. You can call the bank. Call Mr. Davidson back. Tell him it was a mistake. Tell him it was a misunderstanding." She looked up at me, her face crumbling. "We'll get the money back from the dealer. We'll sell the car. We'll pay you back, baby. I swear. We'll pay you back every single penny, won't we, Michael?" My father stumbled forward as if waking from a trance. His face was a ghastly shade of gray. She's right, Keisha. You can save us. You can save the company." He wasn't even thinking about the house. He was thinking about his legacy. "The payroll, Keisha. The payroll is on Friday. 50 families, 50 people, their paychecks. It's almost Christmas. You can't let them lose their jobs because of this. Because of my mistake." He didn't kneel, but his voice was broken. He was a man who had never begged for anything in his life, and he was begging now. "Please," he whispered. I'm asking you, Keisha. I'm begging you." I looked down at them. My mother kneeling at my feet, clinging to my jeans. My father, the great patriarch, the king of his castle, visibly trembling, his entire empire resting on my shoulders. And my sister Chantelle still sobbing in the corner, her life, her marriage, her new car, all gone in the span of 10 minutes. I said nothing. I just looked at them. I let the silence stretch. I let it fill the room, thick and heavy and suffocating. This was the same silence they had given me for 6 years. The silence when I won my design awards. The silence when I asked for help with my student loans. The silence when I tried to share my dream of buying a home. It was a silence I knew well. I had lived in it. Now it was their turn. The quiet was so loud it was almost deafening. "Say something!" The scream came from Chantelle. She had pushed herself up onto her elbows, her face twisted with a familiar, spiteful rage. "Stop just staring at us. This is what you wanted, isn't it? You're enjoying this. You love this. Watching us all fall apart. You're happy now, aren't you? You've ruined us." I looked at her at the wreckage of my family. I felt nothing, just a cold, hard clarity. I slowly shook my head. "No, Chantelle," I said, my voice quiet, cutting through her hysteria. "I'm not enjoying this. I'm not happy." I paused, then added, "But I'm not surprised either." I pulled my phone back out of my pocket. My mother flinched as if the device itself was a weapon. "Get up, Mom," I said, my voice firm. I gently pulled my hand from her grasp. "Get off the floor. This is pathetic." She scrambled to her feet, wiping her nose on the back of her hand. My father watched me, his eyes filled with a tiny, desperate flicker of hope. He thought I was calling the bank to save them. I looked at them all one last time. "I need to make one more call." My mother, Brenda, was still on her feet, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. The terror that had gripped her just moments ago was instantly magically replaced by a wave of desperate, greedy hope. I saw her look at my father, Michael Sr., who was still slumped on the sofa, and she whispered, "See? She's fixing it. She's going to save us, Michael. She's going to save us." My father just stared at me, his face a gray, unreadable mask. Chantelle was still a crumpled heap on the floor, her sobs the only sound in the room. I held up my hand, a clear gesture for silence. I pressed the call button again. The speakerphone once more filled the silent living room with the sound of a phone ringing. "Mr. Davidson, please." A click. "This is Davidson." His voice was curt, all business. "Ms. Williams, I am assuming you are calling to authorize the $80,000 deposit to cure the breach." My father let out a shaky breath of relief. My mother almost smiled. "No, Mr. Davidson," I said. "I am not." My mother's face fell. "Keisha, what are you doing?" she hissed. I ignored her, my focus entirely on the phone. "I am calling about the $2 million default on the MJH construction loan. I have considered the situation, Mr. Davidson. I do not want MJH construction to be liquidated, and I do not want 50 innocent workers to lose their jobs right before Christmas because of the, shall we say, mismanagement of the borrowers." My father, Michael Sr., looked up. A tiny, pathetic flicker of relief crossed his face. He thought I was surrendering. He thought his begging had worked. He thought I was caving just like I always had. "So," I said, my voice hardening, "I am proposing an alternate solution." "Go on," Davidson said. "I will not be reinstating my guarantee. That trust is broken. Instead, I want to buy the note." The silence that followed was so profound, so absolute, I could hear the air conditioner kick on. "Buy the note," my father stammered, finally finding his voice and standing up. "Keisha, what are you talking about? Buy the... with what? You need $2 million in cash now. You're a designer. You just lost your house money." I finally turned to look at him. I let myself smile. A real, genuine smile. "This is what you've never understood, Dad. You think I'm just your little girl who draws on the computer. You think I'm the responsible one who just squirrels away her paycheck, the one who can just save again. For the last 5 years, while you've been busy playing the big shot builder of View Park, I've been consulting, on the side, for Silicon Valley startups. You know those little tech companies up in San Francisco, the ones you always said were funny money." I let that sink in. "And the thing about those startups, Dad, is they don't always pay in cash. They pay in stock options." And when you're good at what you do, when you design the user interface that gets them their first 10 million users, they give you a lot of stock. I watched my father's face, a man who understood numbers begin to do the math. I watched his expression shift from confusion to disbelief to a dawning, horrified comprehension. My main client, the one I've been working with for 3 years, they had their IPO last month. You probably saw it on the news. Ethereum Logistics. Their stock opened at $40 a share. It's now trading at 91. My father took an involuntary step back. You, he whispered. I'm very comfortable. I finished for him. So, yes, Mr. Davidson, I said, turning my attention back to the phone. I want to buy the note, the full 1.92 million. I can have the funds wired to you from my personal brokerage account within the hour. The bank will be paid in full. No risk, no liquidation, no default on your books. Mr. Davidson was silent for only a second. I could hear the sharp, distinct clicks of his keyboard as he processed this new information. Ms. Williams, he said, and I could almost hear the smile in his voice. That is an exceptionally elegant solution. The bank accepts your offer. I will have our legal department begin drafting the debt assignment paperwork immediately. He paused, then added, Congratulations on your new acquisition. MJH Construction will now be indebted to you. I said, Thank you, Mr. Davidson, and I ended the call. I placed my phone on the table. The room was silent. My mother, my father, and my sister just stared at me. The reality was slowly dawning on them. I was no longer their scapegoat. I was no longer their safety net. I was their bank. I hung up the phone. The click of the call ending was the loudest sound in the room. My father, Michael Sr., was still standing, his hand frozen in midair where he had lunged for the phone. My mother, Brenda, was clutching her pearls, her face pale. Chantelle was still on the floor, her sobs reduced to tiny hiccuping gasps. They were all staring at me. Well, I said, sliding my phone back into my pocket. The good news is the company is saved. The 50 workers will get their paychecks on Friday. My father let out a shaky breath of relief. Oh, thank God, Keisha. Thank God. I knew you wouldn't. I knew you'd. The bad news, I interrupted, my voice flat, is that you are all now indebted to me. $1.92 million. And as the new owner of that debt, as the person who now holds the note, I'm the one who sets the terms. Michael Sr.'s relief vanished. Terms? What terms? You just saved the company. It's saved. The company is saved, Dad. Your control of it is not. I walked over to his favorite leather armchair, the one he always sat in, and I sat down in it myself. I crossed my legs. Here are the new rules, and they are not negotiable. Rule number 1. I looked directly at my father. As of this moment, I am the CEO and majority shareholder of MJH Construction. I will be taking a 51% controlling interest in the company. My lawyers are drafting the paperwork as we speak. They will be here tonight. You, I said, pointing at him, will step down. You can stay on as a consultant. You will have no voting rights. You will have no access to the financials. You will report to me. Is that clear? He opened his mouth, his face turning a deep shade of purple. He was about to object. It's either that, I said calmly, or I liquidate. Your choice. He closed his mouth. He nodded once, a sharp, jerky motion. Good. I turned to my mother, who looked like she was about to faint. Rule number 2. Mom, you are to be removed from every single company account. Payroll expenses, petty cash. Everything. You will no longer have a company credit card for your celebrations. You will no longer have any financial connection to this business. Your time as the silent partner who spends the profits is over. Permanently. Brenda just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing silently. And finally, I said, turning to my sister, rule number 3, Chantelle. Chantelle looked up from the floor, her eyes wide and red mascara smeared down her cheeks. "Me," she whispered. "You," I said. "First, the G-Wagon. It will be taken back to the dealership tomorrow morning and sold. I don't care if they don't give you a full refund. Whatever money they give you will be deposited immediately back into the company account." "But, Ryan, my baby," she stammered. "You should have thought of that before you stole $80,000, I said. "And that's not all. You're going to work for me now." A tiny spark of hope lit her eyes. "Work for you like in the office, an assistant." I laughed. A real laugh this time, short and humorless. "An assistant, no. You don't have the skills. You're not going to be in the office. You're going to be in the field. You'll be working on my father's construction crew." "What?" she shrieked. With the workers. I can't do that. I'm pregnant." "You can and you will," I said. "You'll be on site, learning how to read a blueprint, learning how to manage inventory, learning what actual work feels like. 8 a.m. sharp, Monday morning, minimum wage, and Chantelle." I leaned forward. "If you are 1 minute late, if you call in sick, if you complain to the foreman, this entire deal is void. I will call Mr. Davidson back and I will personally oversee the liquidation of every last brick in this company." I stood up, smoothing my clothes. "Are we clear?" The three of them just stared at me. My father defeated, my mother broken, my sister horrified. The power dynamic of my entire life had just been violently, permanently rewritten. Keisha, the selfish one, the failure, the disappointment, now owned them all. My father, Michael Sr., was the first to speak. He pushed himself up slowly from the sofa, not with the aggressive energy he'd had before, but with the heavy, weary movement of a defeated man. He looked at me, and for the first time in my entire life, I saw no anger in his eyes, no disappointment, only a strange, cold, calculating respect. "All right, CEO," he said. His voice was quiet, raspy. The word CEO hung in the air, sealing the new reality. "Your terms are accepted." "Michael," Brenda shrieked, scrambling to her feet. You can't just give her everything. This is our company. Tell her, Michael." My father turned on his wife with a speed that startled her into silence. "Quiet, Brenda," he snapped. His voice was sharp with the bitter terror of a man who had just seen his entire life flash before his eyes. "This is the only way. Don't you understand what just happened? She won. She beat us. It's over." He looked back at me, his gaze lingering a strange, bitter admiration in his eyes. "She's smarter than all of us." I glanced over at Chantelle. She was still a crumpled heap of designer clothes and smeared mascara on the floor, her body shaking. She looked up when she heard my father's words, her eyes wide and vacant. She realized it too. There was no escape. Pregnant, abandoned by her husband with no money and now no family to bail her out. She gave a single jerky nod, a gesture of complete and total surrender. "Good," I said. I pulled my phone back out. My father and mother both flinched, as if they expected me to make another call to the bank, another call to finalize their execution. "My lawyer is on his way here right now with the transfer of control documents, while we wait for him." I dialed a new number. Chantelle looked up, her voice a broken whisper. Who are you calling now?" "The Mercedes-Benz dealership," I said flatly. I put the phone on speaker, the sound of the ringing echoing in the tense room. "Beverly Hills Mercedes. This is Connor. How can I help you?" a cheerful voice chirped. "Hello, Connor," I said, my voice all business. "I'm calling about a G-Wagon model G63 purchased yesterday under the name Chantelle Williams." "Yes, that's the one." I saw Chantelle's head snap up, confused. "I'm her sister and, let's say, her new business manager." There appears to be a significant issue with the financing. It seems the funds used for the purchase were, let's call them non-authorized. Connor's cheerful tone vanished instantly. I'm not sure I understand, ma'am. The wire transfer cleared yesterday. The vehicle is sold. Yes, it did clear, but it was drawn from a breached corporate account. It was in effect a fraudulent transfer. We are attempting to avoid significant legal entanglements for both your dealership and my family. We need to return the vehicle immediately for a full $80,000 refund to the original account. Brenda let out a small, hopeful gasp. She thought this was a solution, but Connor's voice came back wary and firm. Ma'am, I'm afraid that is not possible. Once a vehicle is driven off the lot, especially with a wire transfer, the sale is final. We can't just issue a refund. That's just not our policy. My mother's face fell. Michael Sr. closed his eyes. They thought I had failed at my first step. I smiled a small, private smile. I understand, Connor. A refund isn't possible. That's fine. I paused. However, my client MJH Construction is in the market for several new fleet vehicles. I see on your website that you are also a certified Mercedes-Benz commercial truck dealer. Correct. Connor was clearly confused. Yes, we are. We sell Sprinter vans and commercial chassis. Excellent, I said. So you won't be issuing a refund. You will be facilitating an exchange. I see the G63 is listed at $79,995. Your base model, 2500 Sprinter cargo vans, are listed at $15,999 each. By my math, that $80,000 gets me exactly 5 vans. Am I correct? My father's eyes shot open. Connor was silent for a beat, the sound of frantic typing coming through the phone. I suppose that's, yes, 5 vans for the G-Wagon. I've never done an exchange like this. You'll be doing it today, I said firmly. I will have the vehicle returned to your dealership within the hour, and I will expect the 5 cargo vans to be prepped for pickup by my new construction foreman. Let's say 9 a.m. tomorrow. Or would you rather I have this conversation with your general manager and my legal team about your dealership's liability in accepting fraudulent funds? No, ma'am, Connor said, his voice now high with panic. That will be perfectly fine. 5 cargo vans. We'll have them ready. Wonderful. Thank you, Connor. I hung up. I turned to look at Chantelle. She was staring at me, her face a pale, horrified mask. She had just traded her luxury G-Wagon, her status symbol, the key to her new life, for 5 empty white work vans. See, Chantelle, I said, allowing myself a small, cold smile. You did it. You just made your very first contribution to the new MJH Williams development. Congratulations on the new fleet. I stood up and walked to the large bay window, looking out at the sprawling lawn my father had been so proud of. The lawn that would soon be mine. Now, I said, turning back to my new consultant and my new employee, let's talk about that house in Crenshaw I was trying to buy. 6 months later, the California sun beat down on the sounds of progress. The sharp thwack of nail guns, the beep, beep, beep of a reversing forklift, and the distant rumble of a cement mixer was the new soundtrack to my life. I stood on a patch of dry dirt, a white hard hat perched on my head, the crisp collar of my silk blouse peeking out from under a professional blazer. In my hands, I held a rolled set of blueprints, not just looking at them, but understanding them. The sign at the entrance of the chain-link fence read, MJH Williams Development, and underneath it, future home of the South LA Community Arts Center. This was our new flagship project, the one I had secured. The company was thriving, not just surviving, but thriving. We should reinforce the load-bearing wall on the west side, add extra steel beams. I turned. My father, Michael Sr., stood beside me, also in a hard hat, though his looked much more worn than mine. He wasn't giving an order. He was offering an opinion. I looked back at the blueprint, tracing the lines with my finger. I considered his structural advice. He was right. That's a good idea, consultant. I said, my voice all business. It'll add to the budget, but the long-term integrity is worth it. Make it happen. He nodded once, sharp and professional. Will do, CEO. He walked away, clipboard in hand, shouting at a foreman about the rebar schedule. Our new relationship was professional. He was a consultant. I was the CEO. The power dynamic was clear, and oddly, for the first time in our lives, it was built on a foundation of genuine hard-won respect. I saw a white van pull up to the catering tent at the edge of the site. My mother Brenda hopped out, her hair tied back in a practical ponytail. She wasn't wearing her designer luncheon outfits anymore. She was wearing jeans and an apron. She began directing volunteers unloading insulated containers. She was running the new G Williams Foundation charity program, which fed our entire 50-person crew a hot, healthy lunch. Every single day. It wasn't a glamorous high society fundraiser. It was real, tangible work. And she had never looked happier. My gaze drifted across the sprawling site, past the concrete forms and stacks of lumber to the inventory trailer. There, standing with a clipboard, was Chantelle. She was 6 months pregnant now, her baby bump clearly visible under her bright orange safety vest. She wore work boots, and her hair was pulled back under her own hard hat. She looked exhausted, her face free of the heavy makeup she used to wear. But she also looked strong, resilient. She was arguing with a delivery driver, pointing at an invoice, shaking her head, and recounting a pallet of roofing shingles. She wasn't whining, she wasn't crying, she was working. She must have felt my eyes on her. She looked up, her gaze meeting mine across the dusty expanse. For a second we just stared at each other. There was no trace of the old spoiled girl, just a tired pregnant woman doing a hard job. She gave me a single brief nod. It wasn't friendly, it wasn't asking for forgiveness, it was just acknowledgement, respect. I nodded back. Then I turned and walked toward my car. As I took off my hard hat and slid into the driver's seat of my old reliable Toyota Corolla, I let out a slow breath. My parents had been right about one thing. I could save again. But this time, I wasn't saving for a tiny bungalow just for me. This time, I had saved a company. I had saved 50 jobs, and maybe in the process I had saved my family from itself. They told me my sister needed an $80,000 car to build an image. Now we were building things that actually mattered. We were building homes. We were building community centers. We were building a second chance forged from steel and concrete and accountability. I started the car and pulled out of the construction site, the gravel crunching under my tires. I drove through the streets of Los Angeles, my mind clear. I found myself almost by habit driving through Crenshaw. I passed the little bungalow I had almost bought, the one that had shattered my heart. A sold sign was planted firmly in the yard. A young couple was outside painting the front door yellow. I smiled, feeling no trace of regret. It was a lovely house, but it wasn't my dream anymore. I kept driving, heading west into the late afternoon sun. I drove to West Adams, to a larger empty lot on a busy commercial street. I pulled over and got out. It was just a patch of dirt and weeds for now, but I saw what it would become. A new sign had just been hammered into the ground. The logo, one I had designed myself, gleamed in the light. It read, "Future Home of the G Williams Development Corporate Headquarters." I looked at the empty lot, at the bustling street, at the future taking shape. I thought about the bungalow, the small dream they had so carelessly crushed. After all, I thought to myself, a small smile playing on my lips, why just buy a house? When you can build an empire, Keisha's story shows that the quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. While her family mistook her responsibility for weakness, she was silently building her own success and leverage. This story teaches that true independence isn't just about money. It's about having the courage to hold those who hurt you accountable. When her family exploited her kindness, she used her secret weapon, her intelligence and foresight, to reclaim her power. True strength isn't about being the loudest voice. It's about having the leverage to make the final move, forcing others to face the consequences they thought they could avoid. What would you have done in Keisha's situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below.